So in every one of these phases, that's what we try to do, kind of understand like the buying journey from a customer perspective. What are the key kind of like pivotal moments? And then we connect those to our pipeline management, to our forecasting. And so instead of asking like, hey, like what deals do you have that are going to close next month? You can ask like, hey, how many deals are you in red lines right now? Because we know that that's a key indicator. And once you get to red line, there's an average number of weeks that's going to get through from here to close, and you just get a much more accurate forecast. That's how you end up with what I think is like the right forecast management. So anyways, long-winded answer to say there's definitely like putting the data in, but then that data has to come from like your playbook and understanding your buyer journey, and then the leader judgment that goes on the top.
I'm Devin Reed.
And I'm Sheena Badani.
And you're watching Reveal, the Revenue Intelligence podcast powered by Gong.
Keep watching here to see the full interview, or if you like to listen to podcasts on the go, check out the links in the description below.
And if you like what you hear, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or all of them. Why not? And while you're there, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. We personally read every single one, and I think I speak for both of us when I say they mean the world to us.
Could not agree more, Devin. Now, without further ado, here's the episode you've been waiting for.
Diego, it's Friday morning. We're all in a great mood, you included. Thanks for hanging out with us on Reveal today.
Devin, Sheena, thanks for having me.
So let's just get started. For folks not familiar with LiveRamp, what problem does LiveRamp solve?
Yeah, so LiveRamp makes it safe and easy for companies to use data, full stop. So we really help companies use data. It usually starts with marketing, but then it evolves to basically the whole customer experience and helping companies really become data-driven.
Love that. Love that. We're all about data here, as you already know. And you're the Chief Commercial Officer. So what do you focus on over there? So
as Chief Commercial Officer, I focus on all things customer. I like to say that my job is really customer success. Even though we start with sales, everything pre-sales, post-sales falls under commercial, but all of our team's job and everybody in our company is about customer success. Specifically, it's sales, solutions engineering, customer success, support, services, and so on.
And I see you've had like an amazing career and run at LiveRamp. You've been there almost 8 years. Starting in sales and kind of moving your way up to SVP of revenue and then Chief Commercial Officer. What do you think really drove your ability to really grow your career and experiences at the same company?
Yeah, it's been a very fun and amazing run here at LiveRamp. And like you said, I've been here almost 8 years, and I joined. I think I was our second rep, and in some ways my job then, my job today is the same, which was, hey, Diego, can you join and help us work with some strategic enterprise customers? We were about 30 to 40 people at the time, about 10 million in ARR, and a very, very small sales team. I think we had probably a couple dozen customers, very highly concentrated revenue. Fast forward to today, we're 1,200 people, about 500 million in ARR, and over 800 customers. And I like to say I've had every sales role at the company between then and now. And personally, I think in terms of how I kept growing with the company, I'm naturally curious, but I'm also I'm very motivated by building and by scaling. So whatever we're doing, it's like, okay, like how can we let it scale? How can we build a process around it? How can we double it? And that's just been the mentality. And the team will probably, I hope they're not tired of me saying this, but we're still just getting started. I really believe that the opportunity in front of us is huge, and this is just the early days for LiveRamp, which makes it very exciting.
That's super inspirational, exciting for your team.
It's a great journey. And speaking of scaling, an important part of that, I imagine, is forecasting, which gets us into our topic for today, how to forecast with incredible accuracy. So everyone listening knows what forecasting is, but I'd love to hear from you, Diego. Why is forecasting so important, in your opinion, or maybe even at your role at LiveRamp?
Yeah. I mean, just from a business perspective, forecasting is crucial so that you can plan. You can plan budget, you can plan, if you don't like how the forecast looks, you can plan how you're going to go make it better, if you want to, and things like that. So, and forecasting is usually associated with sales and bookings, and we can go deep into how we've grown into our forecasting here at LiveRamp, but it applies to contraction, the customer count, hiring. I mean, like just really like predicting your future so that you can plan for it is a very important part of business. And data plays a key role into that, obviously.
And what are some of the risks, or maybe you've experienced it at LiveRamp, if you can share, but of inaccurate forecasts?
So if you don't get your forecasting right, and like let's just focus on sales forecasting, it can have real impact on your planning and on your future. So and whether you forecast too high or too low, if you don't get it right, it can have a real adverse impact. And if in a SaaS business where we usually forecast our own bookings, bookings is really leading indicator to future performance of revenue of the company. And so what our forecast on bookings is going to have a real big impact on our hiring plan, and not just for sales, but for the village that supports the sales team, whether that's the legal team or data ethics team, solutions engineering, like our product, and are we investing? Did we forecast growth on this particular product to be too low, and then we didn't invest enough so to meet demand, and then we're behind. So it just becomes really important. And if you under forecast, you might underinvest in areas where you have a huge opportunity. If you over forecast, it's the other way around. So it's kind of like that Goldilocks thing, like trying to get it just right becomes really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was telling you before this, I have a cousin who's a sales rep on the LiveRamp team. So I hope he's adding to that forecast accuracy. And if he's not, you tell me offline. I'll go talk to him. But what does forecasting look like today at LiveRamp?
Yeah, and Devin, that's actually a great point, because forecasting, it's not. I don't see it as a leadership exercise or something that just falls on the shoulders of sales leadership. It really takes the team to get forecasting right. Everything. I mean, the most obvious is just data entry. Like if the team is not like contributing with using the tools or updating Salesforce or whatever it is, it's going to be very hard for you to get forecasting. And something that we've tried to do that I think it has helped our forecasting. I'm really proud of our forecasting. We'll talk about how we do it, but like everything else at LiveRamp, we try to push it down and push decisions down. And so if every one of us can have our own forecast and like stick to it, so with myself and my own book, if I'm a rep, and it's like, okay, like this is my forecast for the year, for the quarter, these are the products I'm going to sell, and then I do data entry properly, and then we bubble it up, we're going to get a very accurate view into the all-up forecast. So it's really a team effort to get forecasting right. So we'll call your cousin and see if they're contributing.
I love it.
So you talked about data and the critical role of data and forecasting. I suspect there's also a role that opinions play, and your expertise that you're able to bring over time. So tell me a little bit about like what role does data play, and what role does your opinion play?
Yeah. So I'd say like there's maybe three components to our forecasting, and one of them is just the pure on like data entry. I have so many opportunities at these stages with these close dates, and that's one thing. The other one is, to answer your question, Sheena, is what we call leader judgment. So in every forecast, there's room for leader judgment, which, by the way, more and more is informed by AI, which is really great because we have all these, we have different tools that will have different AI predictors, and I'm kind of like learned how I work with AI, and it's, at this point in the quarter, I'm usually above, and so that leader judgment is slowly becoming more kind of like AI driven than like leader driven, but for sure there's subjectivity there. But the third element, and probably the most exciting thing for me of what we've done with forecasting at LiveRamp, is that we've really embedded it into our customer life cycle, into our sales cycle, and into our journey. So the way that we came up with our forecasting, it's kind of like we started with what some companies would call a playbook or a sales stage management guide, which for anybody there who's starting to think of like, how do I improve forecasting? How do I even get started with forecasting? I think the first step is to just have a very clear understanding, or as much as possible, of what your sales cycle is. And to understand your sales cycle, you really have to understand your customer and how they experience your solution, and their buying journey. So we started with that, and then we understood that, hey, it's usually there's some discovery, and then so you're in this phase. And when you're in this discovery, this is what the customer needs to get from you, and this is what you need to get from the customer. Once that happens, you check the box, and you can move into a proposal stage. And so for a proposal stage, this is what you need to get from the customer, kind of like the requirements, the KPIs, what success looks like, and then this is what you need to give the customer. So a workflow, pricing, etc. And then you go into a negotiation phase. And in the negotiation phase, just to give some examples, like redlining is like a key event. Like when we give a contract, that's a key moment in the sales cycle. When we get red lines back, that's a key moment in the sales cycle. So in every one of these phases, that's what we try to do, kind of understand like the buying journey from a customer perspective. What are the key kind of like pivotal moments, and then we connect those to our pipeline management, to our forecasting. And so instead of asking like, hey, like what deals do you have that are going to close next month? You can ask like, hey, how many deals are you in red lines right now? Because we know that that's a key indicator. And once you get to red line, there's an average number of weeks that's going to get through from here to close. And you just get a much more accurate forecast. So starting from the buyer journey and how they experience, and depending on the segment, like are you going to run into procurement? Are you going to run into InfoSec? Are you going to run into certain things? And then translating that into a give and take playbook. And then making sure you capture all those data points in your tools. That's how you end up with what I think is like the right forecast management. So, anyways, long-winded answer to say there's definitely like putting the data in, but then that data has to come from like your playbook, and understanding your buyer journey, and then the leader judgment that goes on the top.
That's great, and I specifically love the part where you said it's like those indicators from the customer's perspective. It's not just, hey, you sent the contract over, but it's that the customer responded and they sent you their red lines. That's what's showing the intent. It's not just the activity that the rep is doing that's going to drive and influence that forecast.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And to echo that, I'd say like the more that you can pinpoint on like what are those buying indicators and when they're going to happen. So for us, for example, and I would imagine for any enterprise SaaS, getting redline back, like that's a huge, like we celebrate that, like that's a huge step forward. To give you an example of something that happened slightly before that for us, we know because we deal with customer data and we're talking to Fortune 500 companies, at one point or another, we're going to have to talk to InfoSec and show them like how we take care of data, like how our security processes work. So that's a key moment in our sales cycle. When we get that, when we get the questionnaire, we celebrate that because like, hey, like we're making progress in our sales cycle. So like really pinpointing like those pivotal moments where your buyer is kind of like coming along with you is really important. And it's not just like the hunch of like, oh, like I'm doing great. Like we've had 5 calls, like they love me. Like it's like, most sellers, we have like very rosy eyes and we think like everybody's going to buy from us next week. But if you can be objective with like the milestones around the sales cycle. That'll help your forecasting quite a bit.
Yeah, liking the sales rep might be just a tad bit of subjectivity in that forecast, huh?
So, Diego, I think you were with LiveRamp as the company went public. So tell us a little bit about how your approach to forecasting and pipeline management evolved from pre-IPO to now as a public company.
Yeah. So, and I like to think of it as just been part of our journey and how we grow up, but it just happened to be that as we went public, our focus on forecasting and just being able to be very predictable in our planning just became that much more important. And so that's when we really started paying attention. So until like, okay, like we had done a very good job understanding the buyer journey, and we call it our sales playbook. Like we wrote the playbook, and it's like, this is the steps that will happen in your sales cycle, and kind of like these are your materials. Like this is your first one-sheeter. Like this is how you talk to InfoSec, like that we were talking about. And so we were at that point, and then we became public, and like we had this focus on just, hey, like the forecasting is really important. We have to start thinking about guidance and like how we're gonna inform that. And that's when we connected the dots and said, hey, like if we look at our playbook, and there's really good, much better predictability there. Understanding like once you get to this point, like once you're at InfoSec, like how many weeks you have left in the sales cycle, and so on like that. And that's when we started connecting the dots between capturing data points of our playbook and putting them in our pipeline management system. And we've had. I mean, we keep getting better and better, but we've had great predictability in our forecast. And I have to give a shout out to our sales ops team. Like again, anybody who's thinking about forecasting, like starting with like the most incredible sales ops team is a must, because Deb and team here at LiveRamp are just world class and have really taken our forecasting to the next level.
So Diego, you are doing a phenomenal job of laying out kind of like the playbook. What are some of the challenges that you ran into so listeners who are going to go down the same path can kind of know what to expect?
Yeah, probably the hardest challenge, and I think what we can all relate to, is just data entry. And like, hey, like how do we, like, forecasting is important to leadership and management, but how does it, like, what, as a seller, like I have so many other things to do. Why am I going to spend an hour, 2 hours with Salesforce and just taking notes down, or however it is that you do data entry? And that has gotten a lot better over time. Like tools like Gong and others make it a lot more seamless for the seller to be able to capture what's happening in the sales cycle in the tools. But still, it was a challenge, and it is a challenge to kind of get that buy-in from the organization that this is something that's important to do. And I'd say like two things popped up that help us overcome it, and I like the second one more than the first one. Like the first one is like, as a seller, you get tired of like 3, 4, 5 different executives across the company asking you like, hey, where are we with this? Like, and what, like the best answer is like check the deal notes. Like if you like everything's updated. So in a way, it does make your life easier if you keep it updated. But really, I think the way to do it is to try to come up with a forecasting system or a pipeline management system that adds value to the seller and their sales cycle. So one example of how we did that is, as part of that playbook that I had talked about, we had landed on a path to close working document, which is, hey, like once you get red lines, you're probably 4 to 8 weeks away from closing the deal, and usually like these are the things that you want to think about. Is there a procurement involved, and have you connected with them? Check the box. Do you know who this signer is? And are they going to be on vacation? Like, is there anything in their schedule in the next 3 months that we should be aware of? Is the signer different than like the person that? So we had like this checklist of like a path to close that when we did deal reviews, because we do a lot of deal reviews, it proved to be very helpful to sellers, because you realize that if you did the path to close, you actually had the likelihood of you actually closing the deal went up quite a bit than if you didn't, and then you had all these surprises. And so it just became very clear that participating in this pipeline management process and our forecasting process was actually not just good for forecasting, but it's just help you close the deal and help you move the deal forward. And the more you can do that, the more that you can align your processes to not just help you with forecast, but actually add value to your sellers. And the way you add value to your sellers is by helping them close the deal bigger, faster, the better.
So tell us, Diego, what's next for forecasting for LiveRamp? What are some of your aspirations and goals?
Well, we can always do better. So we are continuously improving, and like we kind of have this race with our AI tools up like at the beginning of the quarter, like who called it better. But in terms of what's next, I think we keep making it easier for sellers. So like the less of a handicap that like our tools and things can be, the better. But then also continuing to push it down. So it's not just like a sales leadership exercise, but hopefully something that every rep does on their own and can almost like plan out their fiscal year. Like, hey, here's my pipeline, here's my big deals. Here's what I expect Q1, Q2, Q3. So that will happen, and just empowering them to do that.
Diego, what advice do you have for sales leaders trying to increase their forecast accuracy for next year? Right, we're Halloween is in 2 days at the time of recording. It's probably November-ish when folks are hearing this. So what advice do you have, or maybe what's like the first thing that they should start to look for, and maybe that like analysis phase, right, as they start to plan for next year?
I would say, and it took us a while to get it right at LiveRamp, but when we finally did, it was a game changer. Start by really nailing down that playbook. So independent of your forecasting, independent of your sales tools, just like really write down what that sales cycle playbook looks like, and what are the gives and gets, and what are the key milestones during the sales cycles for your product and your buying process. And again, doing it from the perspective of the buyer is preferable. So I would start there. And hopefully once you have that, that's not only a great tool for your sellers, it's a great tool for onboarding. It'll decrease new hire onboarding by quite a bit and increase productivity. You'll get, time to booking from start date to first booking will be shorter. So just doing this, I can't say enough about encouraging to like get your playbook on paper. And once you have that, translate it to what you would call like forecasting or pipeline management. Like how do you translate that to your sales stages, and how do you capture that data, and then really train sales managers to use it. That was also evident for us when we really started focusing on frontline managers understanding the playbook and the forecasting process.
Got to rely on that playbook, and I like how you're saying, start with those buyer signals, right? Red lines, InfoSec, all those good things. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, because you'd said something a little while ago about, hey, is someone going to sign? Are they going to be on vacation? In my opinion, the best reason to be out of office is if you're on maternity or paternity leave. And in prepping for this, I did some research on you and came across your passion that you have for paternity leave and the gender gap. So can you tell us a little bit more about your paternity experience and how it's impacted the way you view this topic?
Yeah, thanks for asking and bringing it up. I think it's a very important topic, and especially for sales, where usually, like you eat what you kill kind of thing. So if you're out, you're not killing, and what are you going to eat? But I've gender parity and is a very top of mind for me. But more than that, just like this idea of belonging. And at LiveRamp, we're investing quite a bit on diversity, inclusion, and belonging is kind of like the operating word and like where we end up, because we will all be our best if we feel like we show up at a company where we belong, where we can be our true selves. Absolutely. And there's many different facets to that. But something that I'm big on family. I have three beautiful kids, and like my life is really, I love working at LiveRamp, but I love being with my family, and but they're not separate, right? Like, and especially over the last couple of years, where like I'm talking to you from my home today. So how do you balance that? And I had three kids. I took different types of parental leave with these three, and I'd say I got better and better. But something I noticed and I didn't like is that, for men, it's usually optional, right? Like, and oh, I have this big deal coming up, and so I don't care when the baby's born. Like, I'll close the deal and then I'll take my time off, and if I need to come back, like, I can. And then I was like, wait a minute, but like for women, like if you're it's not an option, right? Like, especially if you're giving birth, it's not like you can say, hey baby, like, wait till I close that deal, and then so that and then I'll go on maternity leave, and it just creates a lot of disparity. And I know that everything from, like, once you find out you're pregnant, like, can I tell my boss or not? Like, am I gonna not get a promotion because I'm taking time off? Like, it felt to me that, like, mothers carried a lot more of that weight than fathers. And I think one way that we can improve that is um, by having solid parental leave for all parents, and then really encouraging everybody to take it, because it just becomes the norm. And we started in this journey with LiveRamp, I think, when my third was born. So that's about a little over 3 years ago. I work with our HR team. It's like, hey, like, we really need to write this down on paper, and come up with a policy that works, and that works for sellers. And it's not like if you're in parental, you're not going to get commission. So we started this journey about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and I'm really proud of where we're come. And I think it's become part of our culture that, you have a baby, you take time off, like, and you be with your family, and what a gift. So yeah, thanks for asking. I'm very proud of the work we've done there. We've thought through all the way to the tactical, and even to, like, how do you pay commission, how do you make it fair, and how do you make it really available for folks to be able to take the time off. I think it's important to narrow that gap that exists between genders in the workplace today.
Thanks for sharing that, Diego. Are you able to elaborate a bit on, like, the commission piece specifically, and how you handle that during parental leave?
Yeah. So, like, at the beginning, we're like, okay, you can take time off, but, so we'll cover your deal, so you'll have to split it. And I was like, that doesn't sound fair, like, right? Because I worked, and our sales cycle is like 9 months long. And so, like, I could have worked this deal 8 months and 2 weeks, and then I had to go on parental leave. So I've lost half of my commission. And for most sellers, like, the variable component of their plan is a very important part of their plan. So it almost make it like that parental leave is just not an option, right? Because I'm not going to take it. So we've had different versions of the plan, but it's a flavor of, you get paid fairly for your deals, and to the extent that others will step in and help, like, we have a system to kind of, like, guide and say, like, somebody will help, and it's just like you just help because part of the team, or, like, eventually you do come up splitting the deal, and, like, managers step in and help quite a bit. Like, there's no perfect way of doing it, but there's better ways of doing it than just, like, forcing people to, like, basically not take the leave, or not want to take the leave.
Well, thank you for all the work that you're doing to help close that gender gap, and make sure that parents can, they can be successful both at home and at work with some of these policies. So that's really amazing to hear that from you. Well, Diego, the conversation has been amazing so far. We have learned a ton. Before we wrap, we're going to ask you one question that we like to ask all of our guests, which is, how would you describe sales in one word?
Sales, I'd say results. Yeah, I think it's results. And as a seller, it's like, I think that's why we all get into it. We're competitive. We want to put, it's like, hey, did I hit it or not? But more than that, I think sales is about driving results for our clients. And that's the fun part, when you really realize that, like, you feel like you're selling, but you're actually like really helping. And it's like, I go back to where I started, which is all about customer success. Like, I'm talking to you as a prospect because I want to help you be successful in your business.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Diego, thank you so much for hanging out with us and sharing everything you know about forecasting and paternity leave. It's like a nice little bonus, little sprinkle bonus content in there. So we're grateful. It's fantastic to meet you.
Thank you so much, Devin and Sheena. I appreciate the opportunity here.
Thank you.